So let me just start sharing my screen. So let me just quickly recap that what we have done in our last class, and then we will continue with our current topic. As we got a break of around 4 days, right? So let me quickly review it. So in today's session, right? Let me just open. So in last session, right? We have seen the installation part, and then we had seen how you are going to create a test and how you are going to run your Playwright test. Okay. So let me just quickly recap by with some small examples. So today's session, right? It is Playwright 3. So this was Playwright 3. Okay. So you guys can see my screen, right? If yes, please type via on your chat windows or
Now
confirm
we
that.
can see.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
today's session, right? I'm marking it as a Playwright 3. So first, right, to quickly recap, just for the first 10 minutes, right? So if I need to write a Playwright code, right, we need to have certain prerequisites. We need to have certain prerequisites. Okay. So what are those prerequisites means? First one is you need to have Node.js installed on your machine. So first step is you need to have Node.js installed on your machine. Second step is you need to have npm, means Node Package Manager. Third one is you need to have an editor, where you actually write your code. This is called as IDE, Integrated Development Environment. Integrated Development Environment. And then we need Playwright. And then we need to install Playwright. And this Playwright, right, we can install that in two ways. One way is you can use your VS Code extension to install it. Okay, you can use your VS Code extension to install it. Or else you can also install it from your terminal by running a command. Okay. So normally, right, the first part here is if I need to install this, right, to quickly explain you, right, how you are going to install it, right? So just you need to go and type Node.js. So you will get a Node.js, right? A Node.js, or else you can simply say Node.js download. Okay, so you will get a link called Node.js download. So if you click on that particular link, right, it will redirect you to this particular page. Okay. And here, right, in this particular page, right, if you scroll down, you will see the installer. If you click on it, right, it actually downloads an MSA file. But once you get to that particular file downloaded, right, if you get to that particular file downloaded, right, then what we are going to do here is you need to double click. Once you get this particular file, right, you need to double click on that particular file. So you will get pop-ups like next. If you click on next, and install, right, that Node.js will be installed. Now, once this installation has been done, right, first step is you need to check for going to command prompt. You need to just type CMD so that you will get a command prompt. And in this particular command prompt, right, you need to type Node.js, node, and you need to type hyphen version. So you can see the current version of Node.js that is installed on your machine. And second step, right, as I said, right, if I'm installing Node.js, you will also get npm. So if I want to check whether npm got installed on my machine, I need to type npm hyphen version. So Node.js, if I need to write some JavaScript code on my machine and if I want to run it, I need Node.js. And if I want to install any JavaScript libraries, I need npm, Node Package Manager. So normally, right, the Playwright library, that what you are planning to install and you are going to use it for automation, right? That library, I want to use it with JavaScript. So that is the reason I have downloaded Node.js, and when you are downloading Node.js, right, it will also automatically download npm. So this is your first step. Now the second step here is you need to go back to your Google Chrome and you need to have an editor. So you need to type VS Code download. You need to type VS Code download. Now you will get VS Code download. You need to click on this particular link. So you will be redirecting to this particular page. You'll be redirecting to this particular page. Okay, so once you redirect it to this particular page, right, based upon your operating system, my machine is Windows, so I am downloading it. If you download it, right, you will get a .exe file. Now, once you get that particular file, right, if you double click on it and if you click on next, it actually installs VS Code on your machine. See, these are like normal .exe files or MSC files. Once you download it, right, you need to go to that particular downloads. If you go to downloads, right, and here, right, if you double click on it, you will get a pop-up. You need to click on next. Since it is already available, right, it is showing that it has already detected VS Code on my machine. So it was not installing. So let me just close the existing VS Code, which is already present. Now, if you double click on it, right, you will get a pop-up like this. You need to click on I accept, click on next. Don't change any options. That will install VS Code on your machine. In the same way, once you download your Node.js, right, you'll get a file like this. If you double click, then also you will get like in the same way, next. Then you finally, once it got installed, right, you need to click on finish. So these are the two main prerequisites that are required to write your Playwright code. These are the two prerequisites that are required to write your Playwright code. So to write your Playwright code. So what are those two prerequisites? It's very simple. So first one is you need to have. Okay, let me just save it. Go to file. Go to save. Okay, it got saved. Where it got saved? Okay. Let me just go and check whether it got saved in this particular folder or not. Okay, it got saved in this particular folder. Okay, now what I need to do here is, now these are the two prerequisites that are required. So that are required. So I'm saying that, let me just close all these files. Okay, so these are the two prerequisites. One is you need to install Node.js, and then you need to check for npm, and then you need to install VS Code, and then you need to install VS Code. Now, once you install VS Code, right, just open VS Code editor. If you type VS Code, right, you will get a Visual Code. So if you click on it, right, it actually opens VS Code editor. Now, what you need to do here is you need to right click and you need to close all. Now, you just open any blank folder in this particular VS Code. So go to file, go to open folder. And now, right, if you go to your desktop, I am actually writing under to my Playwright folder. So what I'm doing is I'm going to my Playwright folder. And here I'm creating on new folder, and I'm creating a new folder with a name called projects. Now under to this particular folder, right, I'm creating a new folder with a name called project 1. And I'm selecting this folder and opening in that VS Code. So if you see, right, it has opened in VS Code. It is nothing but it is a blank folder which does not contain any files. Now, under to this, right, whenever I'm going to create any project or folder, if I need to write some Playwright code under to it, first I need to install Playwright. First step is I need to install Playwright. So how do we install Playwright? So very simple. What you need to do here is you need to just go to your extensions and you need to search for Playwright. So this is one way. I had shown you two ways, right? One is through terminal and second one is through your VS Code. So I need to install this extension. So normally, right, it will show like this. If you click on install, right, that will be installed to your VS Code. That extension will be installed to your VS Code. Once the installation has been done, you need to go to the top. You have a search, right? Like this search, click on it. You will get to show run commands. And here I need to search for Playwright. Okay, and then you need to select all. If you select this, right, it will select all the options. And click on OK. So what it does, it is going to install Playwright on your Playwright under to this particular project. So if you see, right, it is automatically installing all the required libraries, and it automatically downloading some files, and it is actually completing the installation. So you will actually see this hierarchy. You will automatically see this hierarchy. You'll automatically see this hierarchy. So if you are able to see these files, right, it means Playwright has been successfully installed under to your project. Playwright has been successfully installed under to your project. Now the next step. Now the next step here is, now first step here is, now after installation, what or else you can also install that by running it from command prompt. If I need to install it from command prompt, right, I need to say npm init and I should say playwright @latest. So if you want to install it from command prompt, right, you need to run this command. So you need to go here, you need to click here, go to terminal, new terminal, and here you can run this particular command. So it will this is also the second way to install your Playwright. But we are not bothered. Any one is required. You can install that using this extension. So you have already installed Playwright. So whenever you install Playwright, right, you will get all these folders and the files automatically created under to that particular project. Automatically created under to that particular project. Automatically created under to that particular project. Okay. So if you see here, right, now the next step is like you need to understand what for we actually use these folders. So if you see, right, we got folders like GitHub. This is like, see, for example, so this is like you need to understand. So if you go to Paint, right, so if you go into your Paint, right, or else let me just explain. So, for example, any automation tool, if you use, right, if you pick any automation tool in the market, if I want to run my automation scripts, if I want to run my automation scripts, if I want to run my automation scripts, we can run it in multiple ways. You can run it in local, you can run it in remote, you can run it in remote. So under to remote, right, again, we have multiple ways to run it. You can run it in GitHub Actions. You can run it in some AWS machine. You can run it on some Azure machines. These all are like remote machines where you can actually run your test cases. So if I want to run my test cases on GitHub Action, then I need this particular playwright.yml file. I need this playwright.yml file. It means whenever you're installing Playwright, right, it will automatically create a folder with name called GitHub. Now under to this particular folder, right, you will automatically get a file with name called playwright.yml. If you have this file, right, you can run your test cases in remote under to GitHub Actions. So it means, normally, right, if I say git, right, it is nothing but a client. What we actually call it as bash. 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 Git bash is nothing but what we are actually calling it as a client. And if I say GitHub, right, this is nothing but what we actually call it as remote repository. It is nothing but what we actually call it as remote repository. Now, in this repository, right, it also supports pipelines to execute test cases. It also supports a pipeline to execute your test cases. It will also support pipelines to execute your test cases. Now, that option which we have in GitHub, right, that is called as GitHub Actions. So the option through which you are able to run your test cases in GitHub, right, that is called as GitHub Actions. Means if you have GitHub Actions, right, if I want to run my test cases in GitHub Actions, then I need this playwright.yml file. Okay, anyway, that we will see that how we are going to trigger it. There you will get more understanding on it. But you need to understand, means here, right, as of now, right, if you see here, right, you are getting multiple files under to this particular folder. You need to understand why you are getting these files and what each and every file or folder is pointing to, means what for it has been created under to that particular Playwright project. It has been created under to that particular Playwright project. So now if you see, right, and then the second one is node modules. It is like, see, for example, so you need to understand that the second folder is nothing but node modules. Node modules. What are node modules? So see, normally, if I need to run some node project, it means if I want to create some project using Node.js, right? And if I want to run it, I need some Node.js libraries. I need some Node.js libraries. It means if I want to run a Java project, right? Normally you will actually download jar files. Those jar files are nothing but what we are actually calling it as libraries. In the same way, if I need to run Node.js project, right, I also need some Node.js libraries. So what libraries are required to run your Playwright test? Will be installed or downloaded under to that particular node module folder. It means see, whatever the libraries means, for example, if I want to run Playwright, right, I need certain libraries that should be installed. So those libraries will be installed under to this particular node modules folder. Those libraries will be installed under to this particular node modules folder. Okay. So whatever the libraries that are required to run your Playwright script, those libraries will be downloaded under to this particular node modules folder. And you will see a folder with name called tests. The third folder is nothing but you will see a folder with a name called tests, where we actually write test cases. Playwright test cases. So this is very, very important. Okay, now whatever the test cases that you are writing, right, that should be written under to this particular folder. You can give a different name. How you can give a different folder to run your test cases, right? That we will see once we discuss on configuration part. But as of now, right, just you need to remember that if I want to create any Playwright test, that should be created under to this particular tests folder. If you see, right, I have a folder with name called tests, right? I actually create that under to this particular tests folder. Okay. And then you will see a file called git ignore. And then, right, you will see a file called git ignore. So this file contains folders, which it contains a list of folders. This file contains a list of folders which should not be tracked by Git. Means, for example, whenever you are doing any change under to this particular project, right, that will be tracked with Git repository. If I don't want to track any files, any folders, then I need to list those folders here. So it means if I am doing any changes under to node modules, or if I'm doing any changes under to test results, or if I'm getting any changes under to Playwright report, or if I'm getting any changes under to these folders, right, that will be not tracked by your Git repository. Means that your Git will not track those changes. Apart from these folders, right, any other folders like test folder or test example folder, right, if you are doing any changes, right, that will be tracked by your Git repository. Okay, so that part, right, anyway, we'll you'll get more understanding once we start using Git. If you're a layman, right, and if you don't have any knowledge to use Git, right, that part, right, anyway, we'll see that in detail once we are driving Git and GitHub repository. There you will understand that what do you mean by tracking of Git? Means how Git tracks the files that you're changing under to your project. As of now, right, just you need to remember, if you are putting any folders under to that particular git ignore, if you are changing any files under to that particular Git, any files under to those folders, those changes will not be tracked by your Git. Those changes will be not tracked by your Git. And then, right, you will see a file called package.lock.json, and you will also see a file called package.json. You will also see a file called package log.json, and you will also see a file called package.json. So what it is? So see, package.json is nothing but, see, even though you are creating a project and you are downloading Playwright under to this particular project, right? This project is nothing but a Node.js project. That project is nothing but a Node.js project. So whenever you see Node.js project, right, if you want to add any dependencies, or if you want to add any dependencies to that particular project, it means if you want to add any libraries to that particular project, and if you want to use it, if you want to track any libraries, and if you want to use it, okay, and if you want to use those libraries in that particular project, that can be managed from this particular file. It is like if you already work with Java, right? It's like it is like a pom.xml file under to your Maven project, right? In the same way, if I want to add any libraries or dependencies, if you see, right, dependencies means if I want to run my Playwright test, right, I need this Playwright test module, and I also need types node. If I have these two, right, then only I am able to use methods under to this particular project. So if you want to add any dependencies, that dependencies, right, you can add it from your package.json. That dependencies, you can add it from package.json. Okay, package.json. Okay, so any node project, for example, here, right, you are creating a project and you are installing a Playwright under it, and you are installing Playwright under it. So whenever you are going to whenever you are going to install Playwright, right, means that project has been created, that project has been converted to Node.js project. And if there is any Node.js, and if we are creating that project as Node.js project, right, then it will automatically create a file with name called package.json. This file is for adding dependencies. Adding dependencies means adding libraries. For example, if I want to use Playwright, right, I need to add a Playwright library. If I want to use some other, like if you see, right, under to this particular package data JSON, right, if I want to use some methods which are from types/node, I need to add that particular dependency. So if I want to add dependencies to my node project, right, then I need to add those dependencies from this package.json. Then I can add those dependencies from package.json. Then I can add those dependencies from package.json. And if you see, right, here, right, you have two files. So one is like package.json, and second one is like package, okay, and the second one is like package log.json. So for example, your package.json file helps us to list out all the packages and libraries that are required by your node project. So whatever the libraries or whatever dependencies that you need, right, you need to add under to this particular dependencies. So these libraries will be automatically added to this particular project. So you're able to use the functions and the methods from these libraries. You're able to use the functions and methods from these libraries. But if you see, if you see, right, you will also see a file called package.json. Okay. If you see, right, for example, if two people are using the same package.json, right, get slightly different versions due to version ranges. That could be cause, it means like, see, if I say, right, it is like, it is actually the same package.json, right, it is the locked version. And whenever you're executing this, right, it will actually use the dependencies and as well as, the libraries which are added, right, the same libraries, right, which will be used, which will be used as part of your node project, What it means, see, it means if your package.json, right, it is like it will tell you that what libraries got added. It means it tells us, it gives us the list of libraries or dependencies that got added. But if you see here, right, the package log.json file, right, it records exact versions. It means, see, here it is showing that it is like Playwright test, and it is showing that 1.54.1. And if you see here, right, here also you will have Playwright test, and it is showing the exact version which is used as part of that particular project. It means it also contains the same dependencies or libraries, but it is like a logged version. It means it contains the exact information that what versions that are required to run that particular project, So anyway, don't confuse. It is like, see, if I want to make it simple, right, I can simply say the package.json is the file which is like pom.xml file under to your Maven project. If I want to add any dependencies, right, if you add here, right, those libraries will be automatically downloaded to your node modules so that you can use those library methods. In your node project. And here, right, if I say node project means this project one is acting like a node project where I have downloaded a Playwright. So when I have downloaded Playwright, right, it is automatically giving me all these files. Like it gives me GitHub workflows, it gives me node modules, it gives me tests, it gives me test examples. I mean, it is like a sample test which will be created, which will be added to your project to understand Playwright methods or functions that how you are going to use as part of your automation. It is going to list out some sample script to understand that how you can automate your application using Playwright methods or functions. So it will give you a sample script. And git ignore is nothing but whatever the folders that you mention here, right? If you do any changes, if you are changing any files under to that particular folders, right, that will be not tracked by Git. And your Git will not track those files which are present under to these folders. And package.json, this is nothing but if you want to add any dependencies or libraries. If I say dependencies means these are libraries or modules which should be added to this particular project, then only you are able to use the functions and methods of Playwright. And playwright.config.js, this is the last file where you actually maintain configurations. Means like these are like global values which are same for your project. For example, if I want to use any of these values, right? If I'm configuring some values and here under to this particular file, right? These values remains the same for any test case written under to this particular project. It means, see, normally, right, whenever you are executing some test, right, you need to do some configurations. What do you mean by configuration? Means these are like global values which are common at your framework level. It means, see, for example, if you see here, I have given test directory name as .tests. It means whenever I am running any test under to this particular project, right, it defaultly takes the files that are written under to .tests folder, and only those files will be considered as Playwright tests. It means here I'm indirectly telling my Playwright that whenever you're executing it, right, you go and execute the files written under to this particular folder. And the files which are written under to this particular folder are considered as tests. So anyway, means it's like anyway, you will understand more once we see one by one option. So as of now, right, you need to understand at a high level. It means that you actually, if I need to make it simple, right, just open your paint. Okay, just open your paint. And what I'm doing here is I'm going back to my project and I'm just saying, and I'm just opening scripting tool. Okay, and I'm copying this. This is your project hierarchy, right? I'm copying this and I'm going to paint and I'm pasting this here. Now, if you see, right, here I have GitHub folder, node modules, test folder, test examples, and git ignore folder, package.json, JSON, and playwright config.js. Now if you see right, if you ask me right, now this folder is for running your playwright tests in GitHub Actions. In GitHub Actions, this folder is used for running playwright tests in GitHub Actions. Now, if you see this node modules folder, right, where it actually downloads all the dependencies required to run playwright tests. It means under the node modules, right, it actually downloads all the dependencies or libraries which are required to run your node modules. Now this one. Okay, now this one. What it is, the tests. So if I say tests, right, here, right, we actually write our playwright tests. If you are creating any test cases, right, using playwright, that should be written under to this particular tests folder. And here, right, this is actually, it's like an example where it has a script with some example functions of playwright. Means it has some examples where it is using playwright functions. It is an example where it has a script with some playwright functions. So to understand that how you need to use those functions, right, just they are giving some examples. And git ignore, right, it has a list of folders which should not be tracked using git. Means whenever you're doing any changes in a file, right, actually that will be tracked by your git. If I don't want to track them, right, then I need to add that folder path under to this particular git ignore. And here, right, if I say this package lock.json, right, this is used. This contains. You can simply say this contains the specific version of dependencies used in that particular project. It contains a list of dependencies which are actually used in that particular project. So it means, if you see, right, if you right click, I am simply saying dependencies used in that particular project. And here, right, this package.json file, for every Node.js project, right, you will see this file and it shows the dependencies that are required to run that particular node project. And if you see playwright config.js, this file is for your configurations. Okay, now which are used to run your playwright test. So this is what you need to remember. Okay, is this part clear? So if you see here, right, like these are nothing but what you need to remember. Means whenever you are creating any playwright project, right, you will defaultly get these folders and files. Now, when we are starting using it, right, then you will understand more details on it. What for we actually use each and every folder. But this is at a high level. You need to understand that what is the hierarchy and what files you get and what for each files are used. What for we are actually using each of these files. What for we are actually using each of these files. What for we are actually using each of these files. What I mean, it is like this is nothing but the hierarchy that you need to remember. This is nothing but the hierarchy that you need to remember. Now, the next part. We are slowly entering into our actual coding. Okay. So now the next part here is. Now, how do we create a playwright test? Now we need to understand how do we create a playwright test. Now, next part here is creating a playwright test. Okay. Creating a playwright test. As I said, right? Whenever you are going to create a playwright test, right, that should be created under to tests folder. That should be created under to tests folder. And any file that you are creating under to this particular folder should have extension called spec.js. Means any file that you are creating under to that particular folder, right, it should have an extension called spec.js. It should have an extension called spec.js. It should have an extension called spec.js. What it means I'll tell you with an example. Now, if I right click and I'm closing all these files, now you see, right, this is this folder, right, it is not required. I can delete that test example. I have deleted it. Now you see a folder with a name called tests. Now, for example, under to this particular folder, right, I can create any number of tests. So if I want to create a test, right, I need to click on this plus file. You will have a symbol, right? If you click on it, it will create a new file. And if I want to create a test, right, I can simply say sample1.spec.js. Means this is the format that how you need to create a file under to that particular test. It means any file name with extension called spec.js under to that particular test folder. It indicates that it is a test case. 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 Okay, it indicates that it is a test case. Okay. Any folder, right, that you are creating, any file, right, that you are creating under to that particular, any file, right, that you are creating under to that particular, any file, right, that you are creating under to that particular folder, that should be created with a name called spec.js. Means it should have extension called spec.js. Now, under to this particular file, right, if you see any block like a test with open and close brace, if you see any blocks like this, right, it means these are nothing but what we are actually calling it as test cases. Now, in JUnit or TestNG, right, if you see, right, normally if you see any method with @test, it indicates that it is a test. In the same way, right, in Playwright, whenever you see any line of code which is starting with test open and close circle brace, this indicates it is a test. This indicates it is a test. And one important thing that you need to remember here is like, see, for example, every programming language, or you can simply say every tool, okay, every tool that what we use should, every tool, right, for example, let us say I'm going to use some tool. Let us say I'm going to use some tool, or I'm going to write code in some programming language. In some programming language. Means every programming language or every tool, if I need to use it, right, I need to follow rules of that particular, language or tool. What not to achieve those functionalities. Means if I want to write something using that particular tool, right, if I need to write something in that particular tool, right, I need to follow some rules. If I need to follow those rules, right, those rules are nothing but what we actually call it as syntax. Is nothing but what we actually call it as syntax. If you are not following those rules and if you are writing it right, then you will get errors. In the same way, whenever you are going to create a test in a Playwright, you need to follow some rules. First rule is that the file should have extension called spec.js. The first rule is that the file should have extension called spec.js. Now, under to that particular file, right, if you want to write any test case, that should be written in a test block. Okay. So, for example, if you see a file where it contains 5 test blocks like this, but if you see how I had shown you, right, if you see 1, 2, 3, 4, it means in this file, right, I have 4 test cases. It shows that this file, right, it has 4 test cases. It means that it shows that that particular file has 4 test cases. Is this part clear? So that is how that you need to remember. Means, for example, if you see any file, let us say I have created a file, what you see, right, when you are installing Playwright, it has automatically given this particular file. It has automatically given this particular file. So that file, right, is nothing but whatever the file that it has automatically given, right, that file has that file has 2 test blocks. If you see here, right, this is one test block and this is one test block. It means if you see, right, if it is starting with this test and ending with that particular test block, this is one test case and this is another test case. It means if you see any file, if it has, for example, let us say I have similar type of test block here. It means it has 3 test cases. This is your second test. If I have another test block, it means it has 4 test cases. This is your first test, second test, third test, and this is your fourth test. And this is your fourth test. So that is how that you need to remember. And one important rule here is any files that you are creating under to this particular tests folder, it should be created with spec.js. 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 And in that particular file, right, if you see any test block, it indicates that it has a test case. That indicates that it has a test case. That indicates that it has a test case. It means if you see 4 test blocks, right, it means there are 4 test cases. If you see 4 test blocks, right, it means that it indicates that it has 4 test cases. Okay, anyway, now you need to understand a little bit basic. Now, whenever you are going to create a test in Playwright, we need to follow some syntax. What is that syntax? You need to create a test block, and this test block will contain 2 parameters. The first parameter is nothing but you need to write the test name. You need to specify the test name. And the second parameter is nothing but you need to write a function. It means, I'll show you. I'll show you directly on my editor. So, for example, if I need to create a test under to this particular sample, I need to write that using this test block. Now, for this test block, right, I need to pass 2 parameters. One parameter is nothing but the test name. Okay, and then the second parameter is nothing but you need to pass a function. It means if you see, right, the first parameter is nothing but the test name, and second parameter I need to pass a function. And if you see, right, that function does not have any name. I'm just writing function and I'm giving open and close brace. If you are not giving any name to that particular function, this is called as anonymous function. Anonymous function means function without name. If you are going to write anonymous function, right, you will use this arrow symbol. It indicates that it is an arrow function. Arrow function means it is an anonymous function which does not have any name. Okay, and that particular function, whenever you are creating an anonymous function, right, you need to make sure that you are also using this arrow symbol. This indicates when I am calling this function, it will execute the code written inside to that particular block. It executes the code written inside to that particular open curly brace and close curly brace. And here we need to actually write our code. And whenever you are executing any code in whenever you are trying to execute this particular test, right? For example, here I have written some code, let us say code 1. Okay, and then I am saying that it has executed code 2 and it has code 3. Let us say I have 3 lines of code which is written under to this particular test. So whenever I'm executing this particular 3 lines of code, right, which is written under to this particular anonymous function, right, whenever you are going to write some code which is written under to this particular anonymous function. Now, if you see, right, it is showing error here because it is not recognizing this test. So if I need to recognize that test, right, you need to first import it. For that, right, you need to write constant test. And you need to give this. It means I am importing this test from this Playwright test module. From Playwright test module. Now it will not show you any error here. If you see, right, it is not showing you any error here. It is not showing you any error here. It means, I don't know, it means I'm using Copilot, it is automatically generating code. But normally, right, see, if you see here, right, this is the syntax. If I want to consider this test block, right, I need to import this test. Why you need to write this statement, I'll tell you. But first you need to understand the execution flow. So whenever I'm going to create a test, right, it should be started with a test block. And then for that, right, you need to pass 2 parameters. First parameter is name of that particular test case. And second parameter is nothing but you need to create an anonymous function, or what we actually call it as arrow function, which indicates that function does not have any name. But when I call this, right, it should execute the code written under to this particular open curly brace and close curly brace. It should execute the code that is written under to that open curly brace and close curly brace. But whenever you're executing the code, right, here we are going to write these lines of code using JavaScript. Normally, whenever I'm executing this JavaScript, right, that code will be executed asynchronously. Asynchronously means, see, normally if I say synchronous execution, right, first it will execute this line. After completion of this line, it will execute line 1, then it will execute line 2, then it will execute line 3. It means if it is executing one after other, that is called as synchronization. If you see, right, if I am executing these 4 lines of code, if all these 4 lines of code executed at once simultaneously, without waiting for other statement to be completed, that is called as asynchronous. Means it does not wait till the first line of code got completed. Means, for example, let us say first line of code is taking 3 seconds of time to execute it. It does not wait 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, it does not execute the second line. Let us say first line is taking 3 seconds, right? When it is executing this line, it also starts executing your second line. So if your first line is not executed, right, if you're trying to execute your second step, it will automatically fail because you don't see your second step on your application. You don't see your second step on your application. So that is the reason, whenever you're executing your code using JavaScript, right, that code will be executed asynchronously. It means all the 5 lines, let us say you had written 5 lines of code under the particular function, all those 5 lines of code will be executed at the same time on your application. Then automatically it will fail, right? So what we need to do as part of our Playwright test is every line of code should be prefixed with await keyword. So every line of code, right, that whatever that you write, right, that code you need to prefix that with await keyword. What it means whenever it is executing this line of code, this await will make that script to wait till that line of code got executed successfully. If it is successful, then only it will start executing your second line. And here, right, if you write await, again it will wait till that line of code got executed successfully. Then only it will try to execute third line. So that is called as. So if I need to make sure that each line is getting executed and it is successful, right? If I need to wait till that line got executed or that line got successful, right, I need to write await before to each and every line. And whenever I need to write await, right, I should make sure that I need to write async before to that particular function. Whatever the anonymous function that you had created, right, for this function, right, I need to make sure that I had also written that I am also writing what it is. I'm also writing async before to that particular function. I should also make sure that I'm also writing await before to that particular function. So that is what that you need to remember. It means this async and await are very important. If I am writing asynchronous here means it represents that I am executing an anonymous function which is asynchronous. And if I want to make sure that every line of code is getting executed and it is waiting till it is successful, I need to write await as a prefix to that particular line of code. Means if you write async and if you forgot to write await, then also your script will fail because it does not wait. If you write await and if you forgot to write async, it will show you compile time error. It means it will show you the lines where you had written await, right? It will show you an error. It will actually show you an error. It means these two are like a pair. Whenever you are using async or await, right? You should make sure that you are using async here, and you should also make sure that you are using await here. That you are also using await for each and every line that what you write as part of that particular test. You will understand more what it's like as of now, right? Just remember, this is the syntax to write Playwright test. If I need to write a test, right, that test should start with the test keyword. I need to give test name, and I should create an asynchronous anonymous function. Anonymous means it does not have name. And then whatever the code that I write inside to that particular function, right, that code, every line should be prefixed with await. It represents that it is waiting till that particular line of code got succeeded. And it is actually waiting till that particular line of code got succeeded. See, please, if you're already an experienced guy or if you have knowledge, right, please don't confuse. Your JavaScript coding will be a little bit different when you compare it with other languages. So that part, right, anyway, I'll drive you the basic, that how you need to write your code as part of JavaScript. But first you need to understand how do we create a test and what syntax that we actually follow to create a test in Playwright. So whenever I need to create a test in Playwright, right, this is the syntax that you need to follow. You need to create a test block, and the test block needs two parameters. One is the test name and second one is asynchronous function. Where it can contain multiple lines of code. And every line of code, right, it should have await, it should be prefixed to that particular line of code. Await should be prefixed for that particular line of code. Is this part clear? So if you want to quickly check, right, I can simply say console.log is like a print statement. This is like a print statement in your JavaScript. So if I want to execute this, right, what I need to do, I need to write await before to it. I need to write await before to it. This indicates, this indicates that I have created a test. And when I'm executing this, right, it should actually print this is a test on my console. So if I want to execute any Playwright test, right, I need to use npx Playwright. And if I want to run it based on the test name, I need to use -g and I need to specify test name. So it will actually execute that particular test. It is executing thrice because it is considering for each browser, right, it is executing. For each browser, right, it is executing. For each browser, right, it is executing. So there are three browsers, right? So it has executed the same test for 3 times. For example, if I want to execute it only on one browser, so what I need to do, I need to use the project and I should say Chromium. So it will execute only for one browser. It will actually execute that particular test for only for one browser. It is actually executing that particular test for only one browser. It will actually execute that particular test for only one browser. Anyway, Anyway, we'll see these options. But as of now, just remember, you need to open your config file. Under to config file, if you scroll down, right, you can see that browsers has been configured. Under to projects. If you see, right, I have configured Chromium browser, I have configured Firefox, I have configured WebKit. Means when you're downloading Playwright, right, it will defaultly configure to these three browsers. Let us comment the two browsers. So whenever you're running any test, right, it will be executed only on Chrome. So now it is not required to give this particular project. If you run like this, right, it is going to execute this test only on Chromium browser. So it is going to execute only once. And it is seeing, and you are able to see this is a test. It got printed. If you see here, right, I have written this is a test. For example, if I want to execute this twice, right, I need to write it twice. And again, let me rerun it. So it should execute twice now. And it should print twice on your console that this is a test, that this is a test. So the blind rule here is this is the syntax. Here, right, we are going to actually write our code, our test code. But here, right, the test, syntax should be, it should be created with a test block where it contains test name, and second parameter is nothing but asynchronous anonymous function. Why we are saying this as an anonymous function? Because why we are saying that it is an anonymous function? Because it does not have name. It does not have name. It does not have name. So as a summary, right, as a quick summary in today's session, right, what we have done here is, see, we had quickly reviewed the setup, that how you need to do it on your machine. Second one is I had shown you that how you need to install Playwright using your extension. Okay, using your extension. And the third one is I have explained you the hierarchy. Means whenever you're downloading your Playwright, right, you will get a hierarchy. And I have explained you the folders. I have explained you the folders and the files that are created under to that particular Playwright project. And then I have explained you the syntax. I have explained you the syntax to create a Playwright test. And I had also explained you whenever you are going to use async at your function, you should make sure that you are, for every line of code that you are writing inside to that particular function, should be prefixed with await. Should be prefixed with await. And here you can write your line of code. Why we need to write that async and await? That part, right? We will see some examples, then you will understand it. So this is what that we had discussed in our today's session. See, initially, right, it will be a little bit slow because you need to understand that what was the syntax and why you are writing in this format. Once you understand that, right, it is very easy because normally, right, this preparation is for whatever that you see, right, this preparation is for attending, clearing out your interviews. But when you're coding it, right, the perspective is completely different. We don't write complete code. We actually use some AI tools to speedily get this code. But to understand, right, whatever that AI has given, right, to use it, right, you need to understand these basics. So that is the reason first we will drive the basics, and then I will tell you that how you can speed up your test design using those tools. Okay, so any questions on today's session? Team, people who are in online, any questions? Pratima, Ramesh, Reena, Anita, Devika, any questions on today's session? See, please try to practice in the similar way that how I am writing small code snippets so that you will understand it. And then if you have anything, right, please feel free to raise your hand and ask me so that I can elaborate it if you really a bit confusing. Because, right, please don't compare this Playwright tool with other languages like Selenium and Java or Selenium with Python, because it would be completely different. The coding format, right, it is a little bit different when you compare with your traditional languages like Java and Python or C#. Anyway, you will get that hands-on confidence once we write a couple of examples. That part, right, anyway, you will see that in another 2 or 3 sessions, you will get, you will be into that particular, you will get that confidence that why we are writing our tests into this format and why it is required that we are actually writing in this particular format. Okay, so any questions? If you have any, please text me or ask me, or else we can wind up session for today. And tomorrow also same time at 9:30. And tomorrow also same time at 9:30. So if you are good, right, then I think so we can wind up. And please practice in the same way that how I am writing small code snippets. Anyway, we'll take it to more advanced level. But first, right, you need to understand that how you are going to create a test, why we are passing these 2 values, and why we say this is anonymous function, and why we are writing async, and why we are writing await. and how you are going to use your Playwright functions or methods when you are going to create a test. That part, right? Anyway, you'll get that idea in another 2 sessions. So if you're good, right, then I think so we can wind up for today. Tomorrow also same time at 9:30. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.